Hello, this is Leticia. I'm the founder of the Call Movement, and today we're talking about mental health. Not the clinical way, but we're talking about the real version of it. Shows up in our everyday life. Working full time, training for an Ironman, raising my kids, trying to do everything right. I woke up this morning already thinking what I have to do throughout the day. What am I cooking for dinner? And on top of that, I'm thinking, what is my tomorrow? So if I am honest with you, there are those days that it looks like that I got everything together, but inside of myself, I'm falling apart. I feel overwhelmed. I feel impatient. I feel short. Those are the days that my voice is very loud. I'm constantly screaming at my kids. So I'm very excited about this conversation today, joined by Meridith Marshall. And what I love about her work is just that she understands high performing women, not just how they lead, but what they're carrying. She's a leadership expert and the CEO of Uncharted Way, where she helps organizations to rethink how to support mental health in a high performance environment. But this conversation goes beyond. It's about the human behind. And Meredith, welcome. I must say one thing. I get so excited about strong women, successful women, because I know what does that entail, and especially for women like us, over 35, with kids, with a household, with a full-time job. You are a powerhouse that we have so much to learn and understand. So I'm very excited to have you here.
Well, thanks, Leticia. I'm excited to be here and join you. I'm excited about the work that you're doing. So thank you for having me as a guest on it.
Meredith, you work with leaders who are performing at the highest level, but they're also carrying a lot of mental load. What are you seeing right now when it comes to mental health?
I know we're here especially to talk about women. What we're seeing about and what we're talking about really is that default parent. So typically in a heterosexual relationship, that responsibility falls to the woman typically. So we see those responsibilities at home, all the thinking, the doing, the planning, that's typically falling to the female in the relationship. And what I'm seeing right now is that leaders who look the most put together, as you were saying on the outside, are often carrying the heaviest loads on the inside. And for women, that's not just the volume of work, it's the type of work. They're not only leading teams, driving results, they're also holding that invisible load, anticipating needs, tracking details, and remembering everything that keeps work and life moving. At the same time, they're carrying the emotional labor. And this is something I talk about a lot with leaders that I'm coaching. So, emotional labor is managing team dynamics in the room, being that steady presence everyone relies on. I like to think of it as if you're on stage and you're performing, it's pretending that everything going on behind you isn't happening at that moment in time. So what this looks like in terms of high performance is often powered by constant mental vigilance and emotional regulation. So constantly being aware of what's going on around you and regulating your emotions. So as you were saying earlier, you're not losing your temper, you're not getting short. And that's where we see the strain show up. And it's not always showing up as burnout in that traditional sense, but as decision fatigue, difficulty turning off your brain, a sense of always being on, even when you're off. For women, balancing career, family, and expectation becomes this stacking effect. So, women are typically a strategist at work, a project manager at home, and often the emotional center in both places. And the system still quietly rewards that without fully recognizing the cost to the women who are bearing that burden. So the conversation we need to shift toward isn't just how do women manage it all better? It's how do we redesign leadership teams and expectations at home so it's not just one person that's carrying that mental and emotional load in the first place.
Wow, what do you just talk about here? I feel, I don't feel, I know because I'm the living experience. It's just a lot of my day to day life, a lot of all of us day to day life. It's just not the work stress, it's that mental load of everything. And I love how you said you're not just stressed, you're not just yelling, yelling at your kids and being overwhelmed. There's so much to unpack here. It is a lot of pressure to be a woman who are successful in our career, and yet we not only have to perform in our career, but we have to perform in our household. There's so much judgment, and I'm all about empower women, but sometimes I feel that women tend to judge us a lot. I've received comments that I work 40 hours a week. Sometimes I can't not make arrangements to be at my children's schools. And there is that little pressure that are we doing enough? You're going to work, you choose successful. Are you putting the time that you need to put in your household? Are you raising your kids correctly because you're dedicating too much time? A lot of comments from women that you can have it all, but we're living a different time. And it's all about how we're prioritizing our times, right? And I do want to have the choice to go to work. It's a decision that we have to make based on what are our priorities. I see all the time that women are not lazy, they're not unmotivated, they're overwhelmed. And it's what I said. I woke up thinking, what am I going to cook for dinner while I'm answering emails? And I'm planning my tomorrow. So, from your perspective, how do you define that invisible weight that we are carrying?
Yeah, so I define that invisible weight as the combination of that constant mental responsibility and emotional responsibility, like never fully turns off. So it's what we call the invisible load. But it's really two things happening at once. So there's the cognitive side, the planning, the tracking, remembering, anticipating what might happen. It's running a meeting while also knowing what's in the fridge, what you're going to cook for dinner, what's on the calendar, what hasn't been handled yet. And then there's the emotional side. So being attuned to everyone else. And that's an expectation that's placed on women that I don't think we see as much in men. Your team expects you to be more attuned to their needs. Your family expects you to be more attuned to their needs. Managing reactions, smoothing tensions, making sure things feel okay. And what makes it heavy isn't just the number of tasks, it's that you're carrying the responsibility for making sure that everything works. And that responsibility doesn't have clean edges. There's no moment where you can say, this is done, check,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
So your brain stays constantly on, your awareness stays on, you're always scanning, always thinking one step ahead. That's why it feels like thinking about dinner while answering emails or planning for tomorrow before today is done, because in many ways, that is what we're doing. And I think the more important reframe is it's not that women are overwhelmed because they're doing too much. They're overwhelmed because they're holding too much responsibility that no one else fully owns. That's the invisible weight.
And that's very powerful. And it's very rewarding to hear this coming from you. It's very assuring that we're doing everything we possibly can to hold the ship tight, if you will. Um, And you're right. Not a lot of people see that. Not a lot of men see that. I have a joke in my household that of course, I feel appreciated by my husband, but I think he sees that really appreciation when I'm gone for a few days. That he really like, wow, she did much more than I was thinking that she's been doing. So thank you for sharing that. I appreciate. But right now, if someone is feeling overwhelmed, stretched thin, mentally exhausted, that's another level. I feel mentally exhausted very often. Where do they start? Where do I start?
Yeah, you bet. So the first thing I like to think about is shifting from helping to full ownership of domain. So, Leticia, I'm sure you experience this as much in your relationship as I do, where my husband will say, "Oh, I'll help you with that." Maybe it's something with our child or in the house. And I'm always quick to jump in and say, "You're not helping me. This is also your responsibility. It's not my responsibility that you're jumping in and supporting. It's also your responsibility because this is a shared household that we live in." So, how do you do that, that shift from helping to full ownership of the domains, and what does that look like? So, if we look at research on cognitive labor and household inequalities, what we find is, not surprisingly, women disproportionately carry anticipation, planning, monitoring, not just the execution. So, that full scale development process. And the stress comes from doing, and comes less from doing and more from having to remember, track, and follow up. So when you think about the intervention, like how do we begin to shift this? One person should really own a domain from beginning to end. So think of domains as like meals, childcare logistic, finances. And that ownership, when you own a domain, includes everything from planning, decision making, execution, to follow through. So this eliminates the need for one partner to manage that manager.
Okay. If a partner is not cooperating, if the partner is telling you, I'm the one who is mowing the lawn, I am the one who is taking the kids to sports, how do I still try to bring him back to me and say, this is our shared responsibility?
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, I'll say for
I'm
a
not
second.
shoveling the streets on a snow day. So it's some sort of conversation that I have in my household sometimes.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, and it's a fair argument, right? So if we're thinking about domain, the outside care and labor of the house, that is a domain. And in my household, my husband owns that. So I can't remember the last time I mowed the lawn. That's not something that I'm responsible for. So actually going through and listing out what are these different domains. So as we were talking about meal planning, like meals in general, childcare, logistics, finances, lawn work, house cleaning. If you were to actually itemize those out and then list who currently owns those domains, it might highlight that there's a disproportionate share on one
Mhm.
person than maybe is on the other. And I think that opens the floor to a really productive conversation about how do we reappropriate what we're seeing here so that these tasks and responsibilities are shared more equitably.
I like the domain and I like how I also think maybe some clear expectations and, you know, put in a piece of paper tasks number one and do whatever works for your household. I think that can help a lot.
Yes.
And it's something that I'm going to apply on my own household. So moving forward to my next segment, which I call it practical.
Okay.
So we are women working full time, over 35, raising our kids, trying to take care of ourselves. What are the 2 or 3 things that we can actually do without adding more pressure? Because right now everyone is overwhelmed to do so much more. But is there anything else that we could do that it's gonna alleviate that pressure, put your mind at easy?
You bet. Yes. So I have an exciting activity to share with you and everyone that's listening. And it's called the 3D challenge. So, this is something that I use a lot with my clients. And the goal is to look out over your next week. So, now just like pause the video, sit down with your calendar, and look at all of your responsibilities over the next week. And the 3D challenge is to find an activity or responsibility, a commitment, and you either decline, delegate, or diminish. So decline meaning I'm not doing that. I'm not going to that meeting. I'm not going to that happy hour. I'm not going to that play date. I'm going to drop my kid off and then pick them up in an hour, whatever that may mean to you. But find one item that you can decline.
Sounds very liberating, the declining
Yeah.
item. Okay. Keep moving.
Done. The next one, delegate. So take another activity. So you've already handled one. Take another activity that's on your calendar or commitment and delegate that. If it's dropping your child off at an activity, delegate that to someone else or get somebody to pick them up. You can carpool or delegate a meeting. If you're supposed to be attending a meeting and you can have one of your team members go in your place, go ahead and delegate that meeting. And then the last one here is diminish. So, how do we diminish the length of time that we're participating in activities? So, one thing that I have done over the past few years just to help with managing my time is if I'm doing a networking call, which I'll do quite a bit to be able to help people connect with jobs and different opportunities, but it's somebody that I don't know, I'm just getting to know. That's going to be a half-hour call or less. So I'm no longer spending an hour going getting coffee. So 2 hours in total for networking calls because that takes up a lot of time that I need to be spending on my work. So how do we diminish the length of time that we're spending on something? So then going back to our activity here, look at a meeting that you might have.
Okay.
If it's an hour, can you cut it down to 45 minutes or
Okay.
even half an hour? If it's an activity that you're doing with friends, can you reduce the time that you're spending on that? Maybe arrive a little later or leave a little bit earlier, but find at least one activity to diminish in time.
I like that. I will. I'm pretty sure I'm gonna have you back in our next podcast. I'll report back. And
Accountability.
yep, accountability. Again, another pressure for women. Follow through your words. That's perfect because it brings me to the point that we all need to be honest with ourselves. How are we are really spending our time? How are we protecting time that belongs to ourselves? Even 10 minutes. How much concessions we're doing for spending time with people that we don't really want to spend time? How many times we're participating on meetings that we don't really need to be in, but we're afraid to say no. So I think you touch a really good point is how do we protect time, even if it's 10 minutes? Because we all gonna say, I don't have time for that. I cannot even think about your activity. There's so much going on. So how do we protect ourselves by finding time? And what is the importance of finding times for ourselves?
Yeah, yeah. So, Leticia, you did a really nice job of highlighting like what are some of the things that take us away from taking care of ourselves, right? Like commitments to relationships that maybe we're not as invested in, but we don't want to be perceived as rude or fill in the blank there. And so we avoid saying no. There's a book that I want to share that I found extremely transformative in my own life, and I've shared with many clients over the years and it's called Set Boundaries, Find Peace by Nidra Glover Tawwab. And I'll be honest with you, when I first read this book, I thought, I'm a strong woman. Like I can set boundaries, but I'll give it a
Mhm.
go anyway. And what I loved about it is every chapter went through a different sector of your life. So it looked at your relationship, like your love interests. It looked at your friendships. It looked at your family. And every chapter I read, I was like, I don't have boundaries there. I don't have boundaries there. I don't have boundaries there. So it was a big awakening for me to appreciate that while I feel that I am a strong person, I was not doing a good job of holding my boundaries. So what you're articulating really well is we kind of know already what is a waste of our time or not a good use of our time. The problem comes in when we're trying to set those boundaries to be able to protect our peace.
And it's very difficult to set boundaries, especially we're grown up adults. And from my point is I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. Therefore, I'll put this person first. But I think we're into a mindset right now that we know time is limited. So time is extremely limited. And if you don't find that time for yourself to reset, that's the 10 minutes that you could have said no to hang out with someone that you don't really share the same interest, with someone that you don't align with the values and principles. Um, and I don't want to be too rash. I've been doing a lot of weeding, if you will.
Mhm.
And I'm trying to really figure out who I really want to spend time, who I want to be around, and who deserve my time, because my time is very precious. And as I'm getting older and older, I feel I'm getting more uh, picky with the people that I spend my time. And I
Or
felt
maybe I'll
guilty
just
for a
add to
little
this sentence,
bit.
yeah? Like, maybe not just picky, but more aligned with what is really important to you, right? And you're getting more clarity on that.
And it's funny because in your 20s, you don't think about that. In your 30s, you are figuring out. On your 40s, you're just like, that's it.
Yeah.
I know who I want to spend time. I know who deserves a minute of my time, and I know how I want to spend my time. And yet, we're still struggling to find time for ourselves, which should be always the priority. And for me, movement, that's why I created Call Movement. That became the time that I spend for myself. It's my relationship with myself. It is my selfish time when I'm doing my training, when I'm going for my run, when I'm cycling. It's me and myself. I tell my kids, do not disrupt me. I tell my husband, unless it's an emergency, because that's my reset. That's the time that I bring myself together. After I'm done, I come back as a brand new person. So I encourage everyone to find their own time, right? And what is your reset, Meredith? What do you do to reset on those hard days at work or in your household or in general in life?
Yeah, I think I have varying levels of a reset for myself. So, if I'm feeling just a little bit stressed, it's meditating. Maybe it's a micro meditation for myself, just to realign and get back on track. I enjoy my podcasts are full of comedy podcasts, so that's really all I'm listening to when it comes to podcast because it evokes humor. So I'll listen to a podcast that makes me laugh and appreciate that things aren't that serious. I like to get out and hike. There's something about being in the mountains and seeing the vastness of it that helps remind you that we're so small in comparison, and our problems are tiny in comparison to everything else that's going on in the world. So that's just like a nice reset moment for me to get out there and remind myself that I am just a blip on this timeline.
There's nothing more powerful than connecting with nature. There's so much out there, so much energy that it's unexplained, but you can just feel it. I love that. All right. So I think a lot of women, including myself, many, many times, I have felt that I'm falling behind. And what I'm hearing from you, it's not a failure. It might be a season. It might be that time that we need to revisit how are we really spending our time. And if there is one message here that you want to take from this conversation, what is your message?
Well, it's that you're operating in a world that wasn't designed for you. The old model of women having to carry the burden of managing all the household tasks, responsibilities, while holding down a full time job, that never worked. And it needs to change. So appreciating that you feeling this way, feeling overburdened by everything is exactly how the system was designed. So that's very normal that you're feeling that way. And the steps that you're taking, the conversations that we're having to be able to shift that dialogue is exactly what's going to get us to where we need to be.
Incredible, powerful. As I mentioned in the beginning of my podcast, I love powerful, strong women. There is so much there to learn. There is so much to celebrate. And if you're listening to this podcast, I can guarantee you one of those women. You don't need to have the highest title, but if you're carrying your household, you're working full time, you're trying to do everything you can possibly can, the best way you can, to me, you're my hero. Those are the women that I also wanted to celebrate. So if this episode resonates to you, or if you have a friend who needs to find 10 minutes of the time for herself, forward this episode to her. Thank you for listening to us, Meredith. That was a wonderful conversation, very reassuring. Don't feel guilty, women, for being successful, for being powerful, and for leading a household. You are seen and celebrated. Thank you for your time. Any last comments, Meredith?
Just a big thank you. Thank you for having me on, and thank you for the work you're doing to help support women.
Of course. And let's go. Keep moving. Thank you. Bye.